Crime stats won't bring back the dead or regrow a hand. Hey y'all, welcome to my channel. I hope you're having a great day. 3 days ago in Vancouver, one man was killed and another man had his hand severed when a third man went on a violent spree in Vancouver with a machete. Let's take a look at what the Chief Constable of the Vancouver City Police had to say.
This morning, 2 very violent, serious attacks occurred in our city, resulting in the death of one innocent person and significant life-altering injuries to another. Although it will take time before we have all the answers, I can tell you that it does not appear that either victim knew the suspect, and we believe these attacks were completely random stranger attacks. VPD officers responded at 7:38 a.m. to reports of a man who had been attacked near Cathedral Square, which is at Richard Street and Dunsmuir. Officers found a 56-year-old man who had been attacked with a knife. He was bleeding from the head and had suffered a completely severed hand. The man was taken to hospital for emergency treatment and is expected to survive. Approximately 8 minutes later at 7:46 a.m., VPD officers were called to West Georgia and Hamilton Street, which is a couple of blocks away from the first call, after a second man was attacked. Despite efforts to save his life, the man died at the scene. The victim's identity and age have not been confirmed, but he appears to be approximately 70 years old. Investigators and members of the VPD Victim Services Unit are currently in the process of confirming this man's identity and informing family members next of kin of his passing. I want to offer my heartfelt condolences to the victim who survived and the families and loved ones of both of these victims of these serious crimes that occurred today here in Vancouver. While investigators from VPD's Major Crime, Homicide Unit, and Forensic Identification Unit begin collecting evidence from the 2 crime scenes, VPD patrol officers obtained images of the suspect, confirmed that the 2 incidents were linked, and began searching for the suspect. Shortly after 9 a.m., officers located the suspect on Habitat Island near the Olympic Village. That's that small island at the north foot of Columbia Street, adjacent to Hinge Park. They responded to reports of a man behaving erratically who had approached a stranger who was our reportee and began yelling at him. The suspect, who we subsequently arrested, is a 34-year-old White Rock resident. He was taken into custody by members of our emergency response team and patrol officers with assistance from a VPD drone pilot. The suspect is currently at the Vancouver Police Jail. Homicide investigators from our Major Crime Section will be preparing a report to Crown Counsel and recommending serious criminal charges against the suspect. Because he has not been charged yet, I'm unable to tell you his name at this point in time. What I can tell you is that this appears to be a very troubled man who has a lengthy history of mental health related incidents, which have resulted in more than 60 documented contacts with police throughout Metro Vancouver. He has a prior conviction for assault causing bodily harm, and at the time of his arrest, he was on probation out of White Rock for an assault that occurred in 2023. We have not yet confirmed whether there is a motive for today's attacks or what that motive is, and we are investigating the possibility that mental health was a contributing factor.
Just for context for my followers in the United States, a chief constable is the same as a chief of police. I cut it out because it is kind of long, but Chief Constable Adam Palmer did go on to talk about the crime statistics and how Vancouver was a safe city and that violent crime was on the decrease. And while that may be a comforting stat to some, I doubt very much that it'll bring much comfort to the family of the man who was killed or the man who had his hand severed. In a press release yesterday, Vancouver Police did go on to name the person, the suspect, who was charged with this heinous crime. This is the press release from Vancouver naming the accused. Vancouver, a suspect has been charged in connection with 2 violent attacks in downtown Vancouver on Wednesday morning. BC Prosecution Service has charged Brendan Colin McBride, 34, with 1 count of second-degree murder and 1 count of aggravated assault. VPD officers responded at 7:38 a.m. Wednesday to reports that a man had been attacked near Richard Street and Dunsmuir and had suffered serious injuries. While officers were investigating that assault, a second man was fatally attacked around 7:46 a.m. near West Georgia and Hamilton Street. Despite efforts by first responders to save his life, the man died at the scene. VPD patrol officers and members of the emergency response team located and arrested a suspect shortly after 9 a.m. Wednesday near the Olympic Village. The homicide victim has been identified as Francis David Laporte, 70. For privacy reasons, police are not releasing the name of the man who survived the attack. He remains in hospital after undergoing surgery. McBride remains in custody. His next court appearance is September 18th. The investigation is ongoing, and anyone with information who has not yet come forward is asked to call Vancouver Police Homicide at 604-717-2500. As you saw from the press conference, police are investigating the possibility that McBride was troubled. Really? The possibility that he was troubled? Of course, they have to say that. They can't just come out and make a diagnosis. They're not doctors. Between 1985 and 2020, I had 4 deployments at Sur Detachment of the RCMP and worked there for several years. I can tell you that the majority of street crimes are fueled by drugs, alcohol, and, of course, mental illness. I would argue that a lot of the mental illness is caused by the alcohol and the drugs, and the fact that people with mental illness are self-medicating, again, with alcohol and drugs. The stats showing that violent crime is on the decrease doesn't mean that that's where the crime stats should be or what the level of crime should be. It just means that their stats are showing a decrease. Violent crime has been with us forever and will never totally be eliminated, but it can be severely reduced, but not with the government policy of giving illicit drugs to people or having safe injection sites. In fact, not properly dealing with addictions and mental health is the reason we have an increase in violent crimes. And it is an increase, despite what the Chief Constable is saying. Stats Canada has specific rules on how to collect crime stats. And while I don't necessarily agree with how they do that, it does result in the crime stats being underreported. But there is another thing to consider. The safe injection sites, where a lot of crime happens and a lot of people are assaulted, most of the operators of those safe injection sites don't allow police inside. They handle the situations on their own. So a lot of the violent crime, not necessarily severe violent crime, but a lot of the violent crime goes unreported. And because they now have those safe injection sites, it would make sense that the crime stats outside those sites would be on the decrease. We've heard the horror stories of what goes on at these safe injection sites and in the neighborhoods surrounding the safe injection sites. So I'm not buying the fact that there has been a decrease in violent crime. I believe that it's just a decrease in the reported or the detected violent crime. And what about mental health? Well, since the 1970s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, a lot of mental health beds have been shut down by the government. They had a philosophy that community treatment centers, putting some of the mental health patients into homes within the community, would be a better option. And that sounded nice, especially to the social workers and the Bleeding Heart Liberals. But in fact, a lot of incidents have arisen from putting them into the community-based treatment centers. The fact is that many people with mental health issues are better served with institutionalized beds. I'm not saying lock them up necessarily, but sometimes a hospital setting is better for them. So bottom line, this should never have happened. I can't speak to why this particular person did what he did, whether it was solely mental health, whether it was mental health, drugs, or an alcohol fueled. I can't say that. I don't know. But I can say that most of the crimes on the street level are fueled by drugs and alcohol, and there is a mental health component. What the Chief Constable didn't say is that stats lie. There is an old saying, lies, damn lies, and statistics. So I don't put much stake in what the Chief Constable said. And I do believe that governments, federal government, provincial government, and city governments have to take a little bit of responsibility for this, because without their poor policies, people would be getting the treatment they needed, not just be given drugs and sent on their way. But that's just my opinion. I'd love to know what you think. Put your comments down below. And while you're at it, please like this video, share with your friends and on social media. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. Oh, and there is a lot of information in the description of this video, the show notes, where links to all of my social media will be found, including a link to my website where you can sign up for the Canadian Firearm Safety Course. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.